Hi everyone, so my name is Calvo-Perez and I'm going to be talking about the disciplinary actions on child development. So the reason why I chose to do some research on this topic is because I have a beautiful 2-year-old daughter named Ava. I am a new mother, so I just want to know what to expect in the next coming years and what would be the best way to discipline her. So first I want to give a little background on Eriks's stages of development. I really want to emphasize on the first 5. The first one is trust versus mistrust. This occurs during infancy, so birth to 18 months. At this stage, the infant develops trust, security, confidence, and during this time, there's a huge emphasis on the mother's or father's ability to care for the child and meet their needs. This is also the age when the child's attachment begins to develop. Also, if there is no consistency and the child's needs have not been met, they may develop feelings of worthlessness, insecurities, and mistrust. The second stage is autonomy versus shame. This occurs during toddler, early childhood, so 18 months to about 3 years. At this stage, this child starts to develop their sense of autonomy or independence. So they build their self-esteem as they learn lots of new things. This is the stage where my daughter is at. So this stage is called the terrible twos, and that is a very real thing. Children at this age are still learning to express themselves. They're also very vulnerable, and when they cannot learn a particular skill or perform a certain task, they do develop feelings of shame and low self-esteem. The third stage is initiative versus guilt. So this happens during the preschooler years, so from 3 to 5 years old. Here they tend to mimic the adults that they are constantly around. They also become very curious and they always ask the question why. So also if they feel like they cannot meet a certain goal in their social identification in this world, then they do experience guilt. Then there is industry versus inferiority. This is a school-age child, so from years 6 to 12. At this stage, there is still a lot of learning and creativity. The children also accomplish many new skills, and this gives them a sense of industry. However, there are also many feelings of competence against their peers. So this also affects their self-esteem. At this stage, children develop more significant relationships with their school and neighborhood. And then there's identity versus role confusion, which happens during the adolescent years from 12 to 18 years old. Here, the adolescent begins to discover their own identity. It depends on what has been done to them, really. So they face a lot of challenges with peer pressure, wanting to fit in, and they also face challenges with their morals. Next, I want to talk about operant conditioning. So Burroughs Frederick Skinner is the father of operant conditioning. He introduced reinforcement, and by this he means that behavior which is reinforced tends to be repeated. In other words, strengthened. Behavior that isn't reinforced would be weakened. So there are 2 kinds of reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, which is when behavior is strengthened. Behavior is strengthened when the consequence is rewarding. And then there's negative reinforcement. It means that behavior is strengthened when an adverse stimulus is removed. For an example, like Ava's broccoli is on the plate, she cries bloody murder, and then I take the plate away. So that's a negative reinforcement because now she knows that every time she screams when the broccoli is in her plate, mommy will come and take it away. Next, there is punishment, and punishment, the goal is it weakens the behavior. So there are 2 types. There's positive punishment, which involves presenting an adverse stimulus after a certain behavior. Spanking would be a good example of positive punishment. Also, scolding a child when they interrupt is an example of positive punishment. And then there is negative punishment, and this involves taking something away that the child desires. For example, recess, or toys, or the phone, or I don't know, TV time or something. And what is wrong with punishment? There's a lot wrong with punishment. So the thing is, behavior isn't forgotten, it is only suppressed, meaning that it will return again when things are when they feel a little bit better. Also, punishment is usually done out of anger. For example, spanking, that's an aggressive act. And usually when that occurs, the parent is upset and they just, act with anger, and that's not very wise. So it's also teaching them that, being aggressive is how you can cope with problems in the world. Also, punishment creates a sense of fear, and it does not guide towards the desired behavior. I really like this quote: reinforcement tells you what to do, punishment only tells you what not to do. So now I'd like to talk about effective disciplining. The goal here is to teach and guide children, not force them to obey. With disciplining, there has to be consistency. It also has to be perceived as fair by the child. The discipline has to be appropriate developmentally and temperamentally. Very important. For infants from birth to 1 year old, there should not be timeout, spanking, or any sort of those consequences. They need to be provided by a sense of safety. They do need a schedule, so consistency is key. For early toddlers, ages 1 to 2 years old, the goal is to make sure that the child is safe, limit their aggressive behavior, and prevent undesirable behaviors. The best way to do this is to say no in a firm voice and distract the child with something else. No timeout. Adults should always be present to make sure the child is safe and that the behavior does not happen again. At this age, children are very vulnerable and susceptible to feelings of abandonment, which is why the parents should stay with them at all times to also provide them with that support that they need. For late toddlers, ages 2 to 3 years old, at this age, they're still trying to be independent and they're super curious. When they struggle, they don't know how to handle their emotions, so the parent should be empathetic and help them cope with their feelings. Then they should give the verbal reassurance and explanations of everything that's happening. And then once that's said and done, the parents should redirect the child with another activity. For preschoolers and kindergarten age, 3 to 5 years old, the child needs good behavioral models from the main adults that they're usually around. They need somebody to copy. And the best form of disciplining at this age is using positive reinforcement and to just praise and encourage their good behavior. For adolescents, this one is a little more challenging. The teenagers are a little more bold towards their parents, and spanking is not an appropriate method to use on adolescents. At this age, they like parental approval, so maybe making a contract with them is appropriate. Just put some basic rules, and if those rules are broken, then there will be some logical consequences. So my takeaway on this is that as I'm raising my daughter right now, I am aware of what occurs in each stage of child development and what are the appropriate disciplinary actions that I could take. Also, I'm aware of the other children and what stage they're at. So I'm just, a lot more aware now that I've learned all this and done my research. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Bye.